Good morning. Welcome to Talking Point Live, Wednesday, April 18th. Here we are. This is our last show that we'll be bringing to you for this season. I guess, how does that season thing work anyway in terms of our schedule? Are we mid-season according to Nielsen? Does anybody even care?
Yeah, I don't think Nielsen ratings apply. That's what you're asking.
The last show of the semester anyway. My name is Eric Young, and this is What's Her Face?
Jennifer Kohler.
And she's got a lot to say
I'm
today.
the brains of the operation, clearly. Which is a scary thought.
No, it's a good thing, actually. And then as this is our last show, a couple of heads up. One is for our radio folks, we probably will go an hour today. And for our audience, don't let that discourage you. Stay with us as we have a few things to talk about.
Right.
And we certainly want you to join in on the conversation. You can join us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/TalkingPointLive. And there's a live feed going on there. In fact, that's where most of you are watching us from, as well as our YouTube channel and, of course, on the Community Education channel. And speaking of which, we need to say a great thanks to the folks back in the control room.
Right, we do. Lauren and Marcus and James.
And James,
yes.
the Farnsworth
and
brothers.
On a camera today, we have Chloe and...
I didn't get your name. What? You don't have to whisper. Ashley. Chloe and Ashley.
Okay, great.
A number of students throughout the semester will come in and run camera that way. In the Community Education channel, we're grateful for this opportunity. And that being said...
And we really should say,
go ahead.
None of the opinions expressed on this show are anything but our own.
But our own. They don't come from Dixie State University.
Right.
They don't come from the CEC.
Right.
They just originate here. And for some reason, they still let us go through and be on the air. So we must be doing something.
So far, so good.
Right.
Yes.
How do you want to take us into this?
Well, I guess I can just start by saying I've reached a tipping point.
And I was fascinated to hear that from you.
Okay.
So pre-show, we talk about a topic, but we don't get into it because we want the chemistry to happen here and not pre-show. So I kind of have an idea where you're going, but when you were talking about the fact that you'd kind of hit this wall, this tipping point, and not that you wouldn't, because I think any rational thinking adult, regardless of political affiliation, would have hit it, if not by now, long before now. But here you are. And
well, and you make a point about the timing around my hitting my tipping point. And because
I hit mine November a year ago.
You're always at a tipping point, I think. But yeah, I've always thought that having a slow burn, a long fuse, being the last one in the room to be panicked or upset was a good way to go through life. You know, not being an overreactor. I'm probably an underreactor.
Was that part of your critical thinking process? Was now I'm not going to come to a conclusion about how I feel about this. I'm gonna stave that off.
I really like to have a lot of information, and I don't like to make snap judgments, and I don't have confidence in myself to make snap judgments, really. Yeah,
interesting.
I mean, I have an instinctual reaction
You're
to things.
You're intuitive, obviously.
I do have that, but to me, things are always more complex than they seem on the surface, and I'm very suspicious of simplistic thinking. So, unless I have a lot of information.
Well, then you might be suspicious of what I'm going to talk about, because I'm going to simplify it down to base terms. In terms of when I hit that wall a long time ago.
Okay.
But I'll leave that for a little bit later in the show.
All right.
So you're going to be Martin Luther and...
well, so I'll just kind of explain
to the door.
Explain what collided for me over the last few days.
Okay. What made the difference?
In the order of, if I can unscramble it a little bit. So, you know, we've been back and forth being subjected to this sleazy, unseemly accusations between a porn star and our president, right? This lawsuit that's being filed, etc., and these women coming out.
Is it beyond our ability to even believe that we're talking about that?
Well,
I mean, seriously.
It's surreal. Like it has been surreal for a long time.
Other administration, we wouldn't be having this conversation any longer because something would have been done by some congressional oversight committee.
Well, yes, and the thing that really made it particularly striking for me was we just finished General Conference where we sustained a new president for my church. And I was just reacting to the contrast between that experience and my perception of that person as my leader, my president, and my other president, the Donald Trump president. And the contrast was so.
That's a pretty stark contrast.
It was just so. That was one thing that happened. Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. I could see how that
Right.
might put things into
You know,
glaring
because the
perspective
Stormy
for you.
Daniels thing is just always there. I mean, it's just so sleazy.
You don't normally see the president of the LDS Church affiliated with a relationship, extramarital
well,
affair
you
with
know-
a prostitute or a porn star.
You never do. Yes.
My point.
Yes, you never do. Okay, so then the second thing that happened was I was listening to this interview of this lady named Jill Briskman, and she's riding her bicycle, and I think we might have a graphic of Jill on her bicycle. She's riding her bicycle along on her day off near her home, and it's near a Trump International Golf Course, and the presidential motorcade goes by, and she spontaneously flips off the whole motorcade because she doesn't know which car has the president. And then to make matters worse, they have to come to a stop at an intersection, and she catches up and she flips him off again, right? And someone takes her picture, as you can see. So then, this is on a Friday, I think, and so I'm listening to this interview with her and her attorney that's filing a suit for wrongful termination, and I think it's on that podcast 1A that's produced.
So fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
So she was terminated as a result of this happening.
Of flipping off the president, right.
Right.
And so she and the attorney were making the point that it was a wrongful termination suit, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing that really resonated with me is she said, not only is it my right to express my unhappiness and disappointment, my disgust with, my political speech, my opinion, but I feel like it's my duty. And I thought, wow, she feels like it's her duty to flip off the president? That's intense, right? And she got fired. So that was the second thing that happened. And then that tweet, and I think we have a graphic of the tweet, where this was after the chemical gas attack in Syria, and the president says, vows to shoot down all the missiles fired at Syria, and get ready, Russia, because they will be coming nice and new and smart, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, who engages with other countries and the aspect of a war
But Jen, this isn't.
in such a manner as this?
That tweet is nothing new. This is just status quo for
I
Trump
know.
to go through and carry on in this kind of vernacular. So
I
why was
know.
that the one that rattled your cage?
Well, it's accumulation over a period of
Okay, all right.
time now. Where it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back,
Right.
you may
No,
say, right?
I get the.
Right. A tipping point, really. So I woke up, I told my husband, I said, this is making me crazy. And I woke up the next morning thinking of Martin Luther. And I think we have a picture of the 95 Theses, right? Of Martin Luther, who loved his church, I'm sure, and loved his calling in his church, but tacking up to the door of the church in Württemberg, in 1517. So what, 300 years ago, 95 objections. He had a list of 95 objections on church policy. And I thought to myself, okay, I feel like generating a list of my complaints, the dismay and disgust I am feeling now, and I am starting to feel like I cannot consider myself a patriot if I don't push back and if I don't express my distress.
So this is your expression of patriotism here today.
It is by going on the record and stating that this is not okay with me to have a president that conducts himself
Okay.
the way this is being done.
For our audience, would you state your political affiliation?
Okay, that's the other thing that's interesting. So for the last 2 years, I've been a precinct officer, a vice chair in my Republican Party precinct in Bloomington, where I live. And for some reason, and this is another disturbing thing for me, is I have felt since I had this officer position that I should muzzle myself to a certain degree.
What?
Yes. And since now I no longer have that position, another person is in that
So
position.
you don't have to self-censor so much.
I don't. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, because I've been disappointed in the lack of Republican pushback to this president. And are they thinking the same thing I am, that while here's the thing, Eric, you don't have this problem. Your personal point of view and your public point of view are coherent and integrated. You are the same off camera as you are on camera, in personal as in public. And very many people, and I can see this was happening to me to a certain degree, very many people have their private point of view and their public pronouncements that they will say, especially if they're in leadership positions.
Okay.
And this may be a huge part of why we are where we are.
So are you indicating that you have two separate personas?
I think I've just been made aware of that.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So what is it that drives you to self-censor in terms of your public persona?
I feel like with a public position, I don't just only represent and it's just a small vice chair in a precinct. It's nothing big. But that I represent my neighborhood in this case. I represent more than
So
myself.
other people's opinions are represented by what you say?
Yes, and that I shouldn't be too partisan.
Okay, I get that.
And I decided that's the antithesis of being a leader. A leader should lead out and should express their personal point of view. There shouldn't, and I have a friend I very much admire who is an officer, you know, in the Marines, right? Lieutenant Colonel. And he tells me his personal, private point of view, and then the public point of view. And I'm distressed now because I think that's happening everywhere. And then I started, so anyway.
Is that in the interest of job security? Is it just saving face? Or are we afraid of retribution? What's the driver
There
behind?
could be a lot of drivers.
Is it
There
none
could
of
be a
those
lot
are
of
mutually
drivers.
exclusive?
Right. And there could be a lot of drivers. So for some people it would be like this woman, Jill Briskman, who got fired. Her employer, who's a government contractor, said, you know, you have, in so many words, compromised our relationship with federal contracting by your personal expression of your point of view, and you're fired. So in that case, they were fearing retribution, that they would not be getting jobs that they wanted to be getting, okay? So, but sometimes it can be a fear, I think, for my students. It's a fear of alienating themselves from one another.
But Jill was unabashed. I think it was a very visceral response. I don't think the thought ever crossed her mind, and
No.
here we go, mind reading, okay, that kind of a thing. But I don't think it crossed her mind when she flew the bird that, gee, my job might be at stake.
No,
you know, in that
it was her
respect.
personal
just
opinion.
Her personal opinion.
She has the
putting it out
right
there.
to it, yes. But her employer didn't feel that way, right?
Right.
And my students, I think they really do fear being isolated or ostracized or causing discomfort or contention in some ways, you know, among family
Or
members or
just to preserve the
associates.
peace at Thanksgiving dinner.
Yes. And so there's a lack of leadership, I think, in our own lives as citizens. And I think, well, I've been saying all along, this president is a referendum on us as citizens. We deserve the leaders
We get the government we deserve.
Right, we do. And yeah, so you talk.
So here you are.
You
You're like,
talk for a minute.
damn it.
I feel like
I've had it up to here. I can't take it anymore, and here's why.
Yes. Oh, okay, here's why. And so, because my husband and I butt heads a lot on things because he well, we'll just say we do. And so, along with Martin Luther and his 95 Theses, I'm starting my list now, a specific list of why I object and why I'm dismayed and discouraged with the current presidential administration.
Okay.
I'm starting a list.
So I'm going to make a parallel. You've made a
Okay.
very strong parallel between your patriotism and your religion, in using the sustaining of the new president of the LDS faith
Yeah.
as something that gave you contrast
Yeah.
to what we're dealing with our current presidential administration
Yeah.
in Washington, D.C. And then you've come down to something akin to what Martin Luther was doing. You made reference that maybe he loved his church and he loved his. You used the term calling within that, and I'm not sure we can make a direct apples to apples correlation there. He did not. He was very disgruntled with everything that was going on with the existing church at the time, and felt like you do now that he needed to not just be vocal about it, but to take a stand and to assert his position in writing.
Right.
And back then, that was as good as social media to go through and hammer that
Yes,
onto the
that
door
would be.
of the church.
So he asserted his objections towards his church, and I'm asserting mine towards my towards the presidential administration.
My point is, there's no room between those two impetus. What's the plural of impetus?
Oh, I have no idea.
There's no room between your patriotism and your religious fervor here. They're very parallel. You feel just as strongly about one as you do the other?
I never tried to rate them as far as how strong I feel.
I don't know that we can measure that, but what I'm getting from
Right.
you is this is it. This is high up there
Yes.
for you. And so here's the caveat,
Okay.
and we'll get back to your list.
All right.
There are very few people that I know that are like you who have. I'm the same way.
Okay.
But as you know, religion's not part of what I'm doing anymore.
Right.
In a way, politics is my religion.
Okay.
Gosh, I
Which
don't
it could
know.
be one reason why you've been as wound up as you have.
True.
Because
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
your main thing.
It is. It's the main thing that's going on. My
Okay.
point being is that you care at that level where others who can make differences in terms of the status quo, in terms of what's going on with Stormy Daniels, with the whole Russia collusion, with everything that's been going on, and yet nothing is happening as a result of perhaps that kind of fervor. We're not seeing that happening with individuals, with congressional and senatorial leaders who took an oath to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States.
From enemies, foreign
And domestic, who are overseers, who are watchdogs of the executive branch, who have done nothing at this point. And now, according to our most recent polls, we're seeing a walking back with conservatives saying that they're not quite as in favor of Mueller and his investigation as they were just a few weeks ago.
I would
the
love
Democrats
to
are starting
see
to do the
that.
same thing. Yeah, it's an NPR source. I'd have to go through and look it up.
Okay, because
that's why I
just
trust it.
particularly
there with that.
distressing.
So let me get back to where you're
Okay.
going. I'll
All
get you
right.
back on the rails here. So what I'm saying is, you care. And you care at a level to where I'm not the only one here who has heartburn as a result of what's been going on.
Right.
It's got you now. You've hit that tipping point with three things, which honestly aren't current. I mean, by today's news cycle standards, you're talking old history when it comes to Jill flipping the bird to the presidential
Right.
motorcade.
Last fall that happened. Right.
Yeah. But I guess the most recent one would be the tweet then about his shiny, new, and smart
Missiles.
missiles being
Yes.
in Syria.
And just the way he conducts himself. So on my list, and it's not complete, it's just beginning.
Nothing's changed in how he conducts himself.
No.
In fact, the gloves are off at this point.
No, nothing is going to change on that. And then the other thing that just happened the other day is I was listening to some of the James Comey testimony as he's promoting his book. And, you know, I find him very credible. He listens, he explains his motivations, his logic, his reasoning for decisions he made, and I find him completely credible.
The only problem with James Comey is there's no smoking gun. There's no direct evidence in the book or in his testimony or otherwise that puts President Trump in the light of his allegations. It's just not there.
Which allegations?
Yeah, well, the allegations of his Russian collusion that benefited the
To
campaign.
me, that's just a part of the discussion. To me, that's not the crux of the matter.
What people are looking for is for Comey to come forward in his book or somehow and say, yeah, this is what happened. He was the guy. That's what's going on.
Yeah, sorry.
That's not going to be the case.
I never really thought that was. That's not what I was expecting to hear.
Now, a sidebar to that, if many of you probably watched the interview with him and George Stephanopoulos, I found the NPR interview between him and Steve Inskeep, and then later on with
Terry Gross?
Terry Gross, thank you. Yeah, to be more, maybe I should say less delicate. They were more forthcoming in terms of the questions and a little bit more.
Probing, maybe.
Probing. I was going to say brutal, but they weren't. Inskeep isn't brutal that way. Anyway, they're more direct with him. I thought it was a better interview coming away with that. So as you're trying to weigh this back and forth in terms of Comey, do yourself a favor, make sure you see all the information that's involved on Comey's disclosures in terms of his memoir and his experience with the administration.
Well, and you know, since you mentioned the FBI, there's this is on my list. I'm going to add it to my list. The president's attempts to discredit institutions, particularly the FBI and the intelligence community, but the FBI, for example. I believe there's humans working in the FBI, and they can't help but have opinions, but I do not believe that organization is partisan. And you'd have to lay out a whole bunch of proof for me to buy into the fact that they are being partisan. And, you know, they're the ones that came out with the Hillary Clinton email thing just before the election. So I don't see how, you know, there's a legitimate claim that they're trying to get, you know, that they're against the Trump people.
The
right?
FBI were damned if they did and damned if they didn't in terms of
right.
that. And then Comey took the majority of the heat with that.
Right.
With the raid on the attorney on Cohen's office and what happened there in terms of removal of the documents and the electronic devices that were going on, Trump goes through and asserts. He tries to discredit what's going on. Well, they're all a bunch of Democrats. Well, they're not. The three main people involved in that, in fact, were Trump Republican appointees. And
yeah,
it's an old courtroom trick to be on the stand and deny and deny and deny and try to go through and undermine the credibility of those individuals who are seeking the truth. And it goes back to junior high school, but it's nothing new. But what I'm just fascinated by is no matter how often he does this, there are some constituents, there's the people in Congress who go, oh, well, that must be the case since that's what you say. And that's what's most disturbing. And not to simplify things here, but in addition to Congress's role in terms of being overseers of the executive branch, the fact that they have completely dismissed Trump. The latest investigation, the committee that came forward said, well, we're really not finding anything.
On the House Intelligence
the House
Committee.
Intelligence Committee. It's a different committee. They have a different name to that. It's the, which I think is fascinating as well.
Well, I did hear one Republican member of that committee just say...
The House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, which is different than the main House. Right.
Oh, anyway, one Republican member of that committee from Florida, who's not running for office again, said that in the past it wasn't a partisan affair, but it has become, since President Trump's election and this collusion investigation has become partisan to the point where they couldn't do any meaningful work.
No.
Yeah.
Meaningful or credible, that way. Who's going to believe them now at this point?
Right.
Anyway, I'm dying to hear about your list.
Oh, well, I just added one more thing, which was this attempt to undermine institutions. Oh, and the judicial branch. I'm going to put that as a separate line item. All the judges are...
No, but you got a list somewhere here, right?
Well, I started one on my phone because my phone never leaves my side, clearly. But, revoking the nationwide fuel efficiency standards. Okay, the car manufacturers need to provide fuel-efficient cars.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I'm going to throw up a little bit in the back of my throat in doing so. Is it not? Does that just not? Is that one of the fallen soldiers in all of the army that Trump is trying to go through and discredit in terms of all the Obama work that was done and his legacy? Was that on purpose in terms of what he's done to the EPA, or is it just
personal.
one of the?
Does it not feel a little personal?
Oh, yes,
petty to you?
every single change that's gone on has been personal and petty. Has nothing to do with the interest of the United States of America. Has everything to do with going through and destroying the legacy of President Obama and going through and saying, well, look what I've done. Trump's legacy is going to be failing the nation as a result of going through and doing all these kinds of things. So what I'm asking you, though, in terms of EPA rollback and what's supposed to, on some level, help car manufacturers, is that truly the case, or was that just done to go through and tear down the Obama legacy?
Well, I like I said, he comes across, from what I've seen and heard and read, as a petty, vindictive individual. And so, and he does manage to say, like he was quoted.
We don't have to take anybody else's word for that now.
Saying something about talking to North Korea, and he said, President Obama wouldn't have done that, Bush wouldn't have done that, Clinton wouldn't have done that. I'm the only one that will do that.
Well, the whole Syrian bombing thing just last week was, well, the reason why we're having to deal with this is because Obama never did his job.
Right. So
but there's no context to that.
He does seem obsessed with comparing himself.
Not just him. There are plenty of
others.
Right-wing conservatives who still need to go through and step all over the grave of Obama's administration. Still, he's a scapegoat. When people don't understand the whole context around why he said, "Here's the red line. If you cross this red line, we're going to do something." They crossed the red line. Syria did. If Obama had crossed that red line, there were two things. He needed to have the congressional approval, which was a Republican Congress that was tied up.
Did he need to have it, or he chose to have it?
He chose to have it
My
because he didn't want to make that
was-
decision on his own.
Right.
The reason why he didn't want to make that decision on his own was because if we did go in and aid the Syrian rebels, we would be in collusion with ISIS.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
That's not an idea. That's the facts. Because ISIS was in
Yeah.
collusion with the rebels at the time in terms of providing weapons and ammunition and even some tactical help as well. And
Right.
that's why he's backed up and said, there's no good decision here.
Right.
And that's why he went to Congress and said, okay, if we're going to do this, you're going to back me up. And they wouldn't back him up.
Well, I think Congress should have. I mean, they made a decision. And so I like that the executive branch and the legislative branch were in that
They're
case.
going to actually go through and work together. on
Yeah,
something.
we're attempt to work together.
Anyway, I've gotten you away from your point. So
That's
your
okay.
your first thing on your list then is this concept of the EPA rolling back
Right.
emission standards for
Okay.
auto manufacturers to somehow give them a little economic boost, a shot in the arm.
Right. Right.
Who cares about electric vehicles or hybrids? Let's get back
Right.
to
How much we pay for gas and how much we pollute the air.
okay.
Right.
All right. Okay, you sounded like a liberal.
Well, you know, that's another interesting
Not that
thing.
that's a bad thing.
I don't know why a person can't be. I don't know why there can't be a balanced approach. I don't want
basically you're
American
sounding
car
like a
makers.
progressive.
Well, I don't want car makers to go out of business. Okay, I don't want the steel industry to go out of business. But I don't know why there isn't some choice. And why it's always so binary. Why there's A or B, pick A or B.
But it's the same
You know,
reason why
yeah.
we've had hybrid and electric technology for decades.
Right. It's been subverted by
Right.
the car makers.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number two.
Well, so actually, what I kind of want to do is, rather than go down my list, what I think is more important is, I don't think I'm the only one feeling this way.
Oh, you're killing me here.
No. Why?
Well, because I want to hear what you've got.
Oh, okay.
What's
My list is not ready yet.
okay? All
Okay.
right. Well, you have at least 4 items there with.
Right, I do, but let me just bear with me a minute.
Okay, hold on just 1 second.
Okay.
Then. So let me go to the producers and the director
Okay.
back. Bottom of the hour, let's take a break. Let's take a 60. Do you have that queued up? Is that okay to do something like that?
In a minute or two?
Yes or no? Yes. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we'll take a little break. So for our radio affiliate then handling this, we'll go to the the bottom of the 10 o'clock hour, so you're aware of that in terms of what's going on. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So you're saying, well, I don't want to go through the list. It's not exhaustive. You really haven't completed it.
It's just not as important to me as this other point that I feel is more critical.
Okay.
And that is, I'm not the only one, I'm sure, feeling distressed and dismayed by what's going on, looking for leadership, okay, from my party, in my case, the Republican Party, looking for leadership. And so then I thought, well, maybe I'm underestimating the pushback that has been going on from my Republican representatives.
Okay. I'm fascinated to hear about that.
So I went to Wikipedia, and there's a page, and it's Wikipedia, so bear that in mind.
Okay.
But there's a page of senators, congressional representatives, cabinet members, former ambassadors. You know, there's a pretty long list on Wikipedia
Right.
of Republicans who have pushed back and objected to this presidency and have stood up to it.
So hold on to that idea.
Okay.
We'll use that as a tease going
Okay.
into our break. This is Talking Point Live with Eric Young and Jen Kohler. Hang with us. We'll come back in 60 seconds and continue this conversation. If you have something to add, please do so on our Facebook page. I'm going through and monitoring our show there. Facebook.com/TalkingPointLive. We'll see you in a minute.
Radio Dixie 91.3. We don't play that. Nope, not that. A big fat no there. That's what we play. And stuff like that. On St. George's only alternative, Radio Dixie 91.3. Oh, and from 9 till midnight, we play this.
I need a one dance.
And this. Radio Dixie 91.3 FM.
Todd's a great guy. I mean, look at him. What a sweetheart. Attaboy. Wait, Todd, what are you doing? How totally selfish and un-Todd-like of you. Come on, Todd. Come on, man.
Donald Trump.
Welcome back, Talking Point Live. We're coming to you on this morning of April 18th, our last show for the semester, for the season, and we'll pick it back up come fall semester. That way we take the summer off as things go that way. You got any big summer plans? Oh, wait a minute. You're going to go to France.
Well, it is true. My brother got tickets to the Rolling Stones.
To Marseille, to the Rolling Stones.
Yes. My husband feels deprived, but
he should. He's
not really a Stones fan, and I'm kind of lukewarm. I'm more interested in traveling with my brother and going on a trip to France.
Well, that'll be pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm jealous of you that way.
So yeah, I'm just scrolling through.
You've teased us
the
about
the Wikipedia page. Yes.
So give us some background on that.
Okay.
For those
well,
of you
anyway,
joining us at the bottom of the hour.
So realizing that I had been not being a leader and not having my personal viewpoint expressed in an honest, open way. Like in my classroom, I kind of like it if my students don't know where I stand on things, because I want to create a more of an objective, non-judgmental, and I've decided no. I've decided I want to be able to, I owe them an honest expression of what I think is correct, and I also owe them the opportunity to express otherwise, right? And I owe them an explanation, hence the list of why I feel the way I do. But to appear like a blank slate is not really doing them a service. And I know you don't struggle with that because you've gotten past that somehow.
Well, so there's a meme that I saw on Facebook not too long ago, and it says, has high school teachers, what they say, well, I'm not going to tell you my position in terms of, and this has college instructor, college professor saying, burn Trump, sacrifice him.
Okay.
I'm with you, obviously, and some of my students might even complain about this, in fact, that I assert my position, but I do it not to go through and convert anybody. I do it for you to challenge me. I want to have that conversation, and not to win it necessarily. I want to go through and I want to know what your new ideas are. I want you to hear what my new ideas might be and see if we have anything that can come together in the middle in terms of how we're going to go through and deal with the rest of this administration.
Well, isn't it our duty as citizens of a democratic republic, right, to problem solve together, to express our points of view and then look for solutions to problems? Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing?
Well, utopically maybe, but certainly there are certain media channels against us, like social media, that thrive on us being divided more so than on us being united.
Well, it's the business model.
Sure.
It's their business model, and
it leads.
Yeah, and so by the way, I'd be willing to pay for a subscription to a social media platform, a few dollars a month. I'd like to know. It'd be interesting to know if I asked Facebook, not to get off the topic, but how much is Jen Kohler's Facebook interaction worth to Facebook? Because I'm sure I'm worth a lot less than people that are super active, right? But I'd be willing to pay a little bit a month in order to not have the targeted ads and not have the surveillance that apparently is necessary for them to make money. That's kind of off topic, but so where were we going? We were like talking about expressing our point of view, I think, and open and honest, our duties as citizens.
Well, we're
really
talking about actually bringing ideas together and being able to talk about that.
And here's the thing, Eric. You are aware of this as well as I am, but in my class, especially my voice and civility and public discourse, I do these little, checkup quizzes. I say see if you can, who can tell me the names of our 2 senators from your home state? Who can tell me the names of the representatives in the House, in Congress? Blank stares, okay? Who can tell me the names of anybody sitting on the Supreme Court? And remember what a big deal that Supreme Court was this last election? That's why people rationalized to themselves.
Yes.
They had to vote for certain people over
It was a
other
tipping
people.
point for
Right.
voting for Trump. Was the
Because
Supreme
we
Court
have to
nominee.
have this conservative seat on, but your kids don't know who's on the court. They don't know what the court decides. They don't know how important the court is in their lives. And they don't care. Okay? What they can tell you is playoff standings and salaries that professional athletes get and what some woman wore to some award ceremony by some designer. That's what they can tell you about. Come on. You ask your students to name.
No, there's no question, but
Yeah.
is that a willing ignorance, or are they like, I can't even trust it, so I don't go there?
No, they're not.
don't think that's that critical?
They don't see the value in knowing that information.
That's
It's
interesting.
not salient
I
to
can't
them.
paint my students with that same broad brush because I do have some remarkable critical thinkers in
Well,
our
okay,
discussions. about
so
what's going
that's a
on.
generalization, and we know all generalizations are false. Okay, so let's just say the majority.
$13.54, by the way,
Yes.
is what you're worth to Facebook.
Me, Jen Kohler, or just the average American?
The average American, and this
Because
is Canadian users as well as, and I would imagine Canadian users might-
$13 a month or per year?
$13 each quarter to Facebook.
Oh, I could pay that
So
if
yeah,
I
I would
wanted to
gladly
use.
pay that amount to a social media channel that actually
Protects your data?
protected my privacy in that respect and vetted their sources.
So let's say we round it up to $16 a quarter. That's $4 a month
Right.
for a little bit of privacy and
Right.
protection.
So $50 a year,
Yeah.
you'd be all right with that.
I would.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
we pay that for
and I
Netflix.
think if they have a free model, fine. For people who would rather deal with the
Right.
issues.
Why not have some tiers
Yeah.
involved?
Yeah.
But then doesn't that start to separate
But
us
I want to
in
be
classes?
Yes, but I want to go back to my students now. I want to be clear that before I started teaching this class, I could not name all 9 justices on the
This
court
class being
either.
Voice and Civility.
Right. Okay. So one of the wonderful things about being an instructor, an educator, is you have to constantly educate yourself, or you're not worth much in the classroom.
No, you're not. You got
So
it.
I would say that I have learned a lot just preparing to teach various courses. And so I'm not saying it's just my students. I'm saying it's our society. It's our whole culture is distracted by the wrong things. Our priorities about what's important in life are terribly skewed.
So obviously evidence of that is what you're talking about in terms of this relatively unknown movement that's happening with conservatives and liberals alike on this Wikipedia page that's documenting what they're doing to eradicate what's happening within the Trump administration.
Well, in the Wikipedia, it's just Republicans who have pushed back
Republicans.
and
Okay,
come
I
out.
haven't
Yeah,
seen
this
the
is
article,
just a
so-
Republican page.
Okay.
Because for somebody like me who wants to be in the Republican Party, wants to identify with that party, wants that leadership.
You want you want that. So are you talking about becoming a leader within the local?
No, not
Okay.
myself. Only a leader.
I wish you would,
Only
Jen.
a leader for just
For your precinct?
myself.
Just for yourself.
For
Okay.
myself, okay? And I want the leaders that I've elected to lead, okay? And in this case, I feel like there's so much at stake for our
Why not throw your
country.
hat in the ring and become a delegate? Why not lead?
Well, there's lots of ways to lead, okay?
Right,
And
that's
so,
what I'm saying.
Right. Well,
It's one thing to lead yourself, and I think you'll be a good follower.
Well, I just say that I did run for a county office last year, and in my platform statement I said, I don't think bashing other points of view is an effective way, to manage conversations. Anyway, I did not get the position that I was running for at the county. So I have a feeling that I'm not what you call super electable. Anyway, I'm just saying that.
Okay. I had no idea, A, that you were running
Well,
to begin with.
our county
so,
chair.
B, maybe you should get a campaign manager to help you out.
Well, okay, we're getting distracted
Okay,
again.
all right, let's go
Okay,
back. Sorry.
So anyway, back to this crisis that I think a lot of people are feeling. I'm not the only one who's feeling this sense of dismay and disgust, because I'm at the disgust level now with the current administration.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
and dismay. So I did go, and I was like, well, okay, now, what about Chris Stewart? He's running for re-election. How has he led, if you will, in this arena of interacting with the president and, you know, the old thing, do you support President Trump? Because I will say, we have a local person down here who's running against Mitt Romney. The first thing out of his mouth, and I don't even want to say his name because I feel bad, but he says, I support President Trump. And I heard that the other day, and I was just, again, very distressed that he would say that this late into the game.
Hasn't Mitt Romney, though, kind of walked back his position?
Well,
in terms of
okay,
supporting
so I
the
looked up
president?
Romney and Stewart.
Okay.
So under Chris Stewart, I noticed that in 2016, before Trump had the nomination clinched, right? Stewart called him our little Mussolini, our own Mussolini.
Right.
He did.
He's walked that back as well.
Right? So clearly at the beginning, he felt free to express his point of view. So now I was just reading, I was looking for current information on what Stewart has said about Trump, right? And he has been very plain that if Trump were to try to fire Mueller, the special counsel or special investigation, that would be a mistake.
Sure, he says that now,
Yeah.
but isn't that just partisan bungee jumping? Isn't that just what he did with his Mussolini comment? I mean, yeah, he can say anything he wants right now about, well, in the parenthetical, well, if Trump fires Mueller, then we're going to raise hell. Well, when
Right.
Trump fires Mueller, I guess the proof will be in the pudding. But you know what? I have my doubts. I don't think anything's going to happen on the conservative side of the House.
I'll tell you what, if that happens, I'll be in the street with a sign.
That's what you were saying,
That
right?
that will just be
Well, I'll be with
more than I can tolerate. And you know, and I think I'm sensitive because of what's happening in Venezuela, and I have family there, and I've seen what's happened to that delicate democracy that they were trying to have there.
that's just it.
It's so trashed. It's so trashed, and people are
the
feeling.
same thing is going on here.
Well, I'm definitely at the point where I'll be in the street with a sign if that happens. So, anyway.
How much can this democracy take? And that's an interesting adjective that you're
Well,
using.
I think our judicial branch has been holding up, has been pushing back.
Okay.
I think our judicial branch is coming, and I think our bureaucracy, I think even though edicts come down from on high, somehow they don't get executed. A lot of times.
right. Okay.
Very
Right.
slowly. Okay, so I think the bureaucracy, if you want to call that, it's almost like a fourth or
Don't
fifth
mind
branch
the
of the
flying
government.
monkey. We've got things
And
under
I
control
think
over
the
here.
media, and that's a huge, broad term, I think sections of the media have been very diligent in investigating and putting forth information.
Right.
Some
if
sections.
nothing else, this whole administrative cycle has improved what's been happening in terms of the Fourth Estate.
Yeah, and I think for my own self as a citizen, I have this a heightened sense of awareness and of alarm. So, like I said, now I can name you the 5 people on the court.
Right.
I mean, the 9 people on the court, right? And I can name representatives. I'm much more mentally engaged in the process of being a citizen. And I think that could be the one positive thing I would say about the situation we're in is I don't think I'm alone in this heightened engagement
Okay.
and awareness.
So I've,
Yeah.
I've derailed you from the direction you were going with Chris Stewart.
Okay, so anyway, I was looking to see, well, what are my leaders? What are my party leaders doing, and how are they pushing back? So my impression from Stewart is that he's got a line not to be crossed. Then I was looking, well, okay, now Mitt Romney's running for office as well. He's declared. So what does he have to say? And I noticed on NPR, just I think in February, he had that they're terming a veiled swipe, okay, at Trump. And I think Romney was talking about legal immigration. Okay, and that's on my list too, how the refugees that were supposed to be admitted into our country have been highly curtailed. I just think anybody who has a heart when it comes to humanity and sees what's happening in Syria, to deny women and children and families access as refugees. Europe's taking the brunt of this. Anyone who has a heart would be mortified to see what our government's doing as far as blocking people from refuge.
But we have Trump's base who, if you happen to be of Latino descent, you don't belong here, regardless if I've vetted you and whether or not you're a citizen. You still don't belong. I mean, it's if you're black, you don't belong. If you're anything other than the white old GOP establishment.
What percentage of the population of like men, women, and children do you think that is in the country? That base you're talking about?
About 30%.
30. So, what makes you comfortable with that number? I mean, if you actually.
Well, I'm looking at voting. Okay, in terms of
because he didn't win the popular vote.
No, he did not win the popular vote, but still the numbers come in.
Right.
At about 27%.
You know, it would be interesting. I would really like to know, and then I would like to know of the people that did vote for him.
Right. What kind of changes have happened there?
How would any of those people? I mean, and that's another thing.
So
how did we end up with those two choices? How did that happen in this country? Again,
we need another show for that.
It's because of who we are as a population. That's how that happened.
We can certainly dissect that and see, because you know, I could sit here and be critical about the Democratic National Committee as well. I mean, there's so much we could dedicate an entire show to that.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Is that within all this partisanship, we've had party breakdowns.
We have. Yes.
A point of just serving special interests and lobbyists and that kind of thing. And this is nothing new. It's nothing. It's just that you called it a pus-filled boil.
Oh, this presidency, yes.
It's just that's just the infected boil of the body that is the United States.
The body politic.
The body politic.
Yeah.
I better be careful because I've called him a poop-flying monkey, and now we're an infected boil.
Name caller. That's really?
Yep.
Name caller?
In my opinion.
Yeah, okay.
That's how I feel.
All right. I mean, I thought these ad hominem attacks on the person were...
I can back them up.
You can back them up with logic and statistics? Yes, and facts.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay, so we were talking about Romney and Stewart as two people that are running for office. And so guess what I'm starting to look for? I saw this list on Wikipedia, and it was kind of heartening to me to see all of these people. And then, you know, there's people that are no longer running for office, like Jeff Flake, you know, who because he's not running for office and doesn't feel like he has to kowtow to a powerful minority, this base you're talking about, felt liberated to fully express his dismay, okay? So I guess what I'm looking for from my leaders is a stronger position, more particular and specific position on what's happening in the presidency and the executive branch, abuses that they see happening to our institutions, and the truth. Comey said that this president, in Comey's opinion, is untethered from the truth, and that the truth is our basic core value as Americans. And when you think about it, what is it we have in common? Because we disagree on a lot of things. We can disagree on, he was saying, gun control, birth control, immigration, all those things as Americans we can disagree on. These are problems that need to be solved, challenges to deal with the environment. But if we have one thing in common, it's our value of the truth. And to tolerate consistent misrepresentation of the truth and to overlook it, I just think our leaders cannot not call it out. They have to call it out every time it happens. We have to call it out. We have to be our own leaders.
That's what we're doing during the
out.
show, but I'm just not seeing it happening on the leadership level. I'm not seeing that calling out happen.
Well, maybe it's just not loud enough.
It's being drowned out by all the peripherals. It's being drowned out by the Stormy Daniels thing.
Right. And again, that's back on us. If we click on those stories, if we watch and patronize those stations who focus on the trivial, I mean, it's trivial in the sense that it's not at the heart of what our nation should be addressing. It's also not trivial because this is indicative of the character of the leader of the country. This is, silencing people and threatening people and lying about things and being an adulterer. I mean, it's just disgusting. It is. And I know other presidents had issues about that too, but somehow this seems to dominate.
Be the Christian rights excuse for that. Well, JFK,
Yeah.
and what happened with,
Right.
Bill Clinton. So, he's
Yeah.
just a man.
Well, and I'm not going to get into a parsing who was worse, breaking a young woman's heart
Right.
that falls in love with an older man who's her boss. I'm not going to get into parsing that, right?
What I don't understand is why it's even tolerated.
Well,
Why
it's the line.
even normalized.
Yeah, it's the line.
So much has been normalized since his swearing in at this point that we cannot even recognize the office of the president
Right.
of the United States.
Right. So I guess the big thing for me for today was for us to look at ourselves, to look at where the blame and the responsibility lies for where we are.
Okay.
And it really is on me and on everybody who's not, they say if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I feel like I now have to take a more public stand. I have to educate myself now with my list.
So is this show part of that public stand? Obviously, it's on some
Well, it
level.
is.
So what are you doing outside of Talking Point Live?
Well, I'm going to post a list on my door, like Martin Luther nailed his to the door of the church. My door in my office is my church door, I guess, for right now.
Okay.
And I'm just going to add to it. I've got a few more things today to put on there, and I'm just going to try to back up my dismay and disgust with facts.
So when you get that up there, I'll take a picture of that and post it up on our Facebook page if you're okay with that. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going public with it. So
Right.
that's part of your leadership. What else are you going to do?
Besides inform myself and
Inspire us
express.
here, because I'm inspired by you here and by you going through and telling us this. And I'm thinking, okay, so what am I going to do?
Okay, well,
well.
what comes to your mind as far as...
Well, this show is part of that.
Okay.
And certainly our stewardship with our students is part of that. And not from a partisan standpoint, I have to declare in my criticism of all things having to do with the administration, as we look at it in terms of social media, as we look at it in terms of critical thinking, that they're failures on those levels. They're not failures on the party level, they're failures on the character level.
Okay.
And I tell my students, if I were I used to be a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, and if I were still, I would still have the same criticisms, just like
Yes.
you do.
Yes.
So it's not, I'm not coming from this as, well, the only reason why you're fighting him is because you're a Democrat.
No.
I'm not even sure I'm a Democrat anymore. I don't know what
Before
that is.
anything, you're an American.
Right.
And
Right.
that's the crux of the matter. We have to stop being divided by the clickbaiters.
Right.
We have to stop letting ourselves be divided and conquered, because that's basically what's happening.
Well, so you've asked, so what can I do? And
Yeah.
I purposefully, those of you who happen to follow me on Facebook, you know that I have really knocked off anything having to do with any kind of political commentary. Mainly because I just don't have the energy to go there anymore, and I have some stress considerations that I need to listen to, because if I don't, then it's going to be a short-lived life for me. And it'll also to appease my spouse, because he's like, you got to back off on this. So, but Facebook, social media is that platform for me, at least, and especially in teaching social media and its effect on the body politic.
Okay.
At the very least, I'll go in and say, you know what, that meme you posted, here's what it really means, and you haven't vetted it, and if you did,
Would you still post
you would
it?
be better, right?
Yeah.
You would be better informed. I guess that's my fight, is to go through and help people become better informed. I'm hoping that this conversation that we're having is a model to you, the audience, on how to become better informed, and not just in terms of going through and researching and finding things, but also listening to each other's ideas.
Be better informed, be better at listening, and be a leader. Be a leader to yourself. Be a leader to your family. Be a leader to the people who trust and depend on you.
So you have to know where you stand if you're going to be that leader.
Right, you do. So it requires some effort. And going back to General Conference, I remember President Nelson said, see if you can think of things you can set aside in order to do other things that are more important. And I'm saying the same thing. What can I set aside?
Like fishing?
Well, I don't fish a lot. But you catch my drift.
I do.
Maybe we can, as citizens, say, what can I set aside that I distract myself with or entertain myself with a little bit in order to focus on the things that are really important, really critical to my happiness and well-being, to my future. Because that's what my country represents. It represents my happiness and well-being, my future, my children's future and grandchildren's future, And so if I'm not taking care of it, I only have myself to blame.
No, yeah, I get you there. And I have to frankly come back and say, I've hit the wall of, I just can't care that much anymore. And so I'd rather pack up my motorcycle.
You might as well live in Russia.
Throw my leg
might
over
as
it
well live in
and
Russia.
go out into the desert and enjoy myself.
Yeah, those people are so trodden down by that government and the misinformation campaigns and the discouragement. You know, that's where they are. That's where they are.
They have a little different history than we do.
They do. But they've probably, for the most part, signed off. And anybody who sticks their head above the whack-a-mole thing in Russia just gets hammered.
Just gets hammered back
Yeah.
again.
And we can't censor ourselves because we're afraid of a vindictive
I'm not afraid.
administration.
Bring it on. I'm not
Yeah.
afraid. I'm
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. This has been
Yeah.
exhausting. It's just crazy.
It has been. I don't know, but has it led to contention and difficulty in family situations for you? Because
Yes.
I have noticed among my students expressing that, and even my own household, everyone is so emotional. Well, not everyone, but so many of us are emotional about this that it's difficult to even have a productive conversation because of the emotions around this.
Maybe we can't take it personally anymore. We can't. We can be vetted in terms of our patriotism and what's right for the country, in terms of upholding and defending the Constitution of the United States. But I can't be offended by you if you don't agree with me.
If you choose to be offended, because it's a choice, I believe, if you choose to be offended by someone who's different,
For a lot of people, and forgive me for cutting you off there.
Yeah.
So my social media students are in an assignment right now that gets into their automatic attitudinal default, meaning when you hear something and you have that visceral response to it, what's behind that visceral response? What gets you to go through and say, oh, well, I think you're a bigot as a result of you saying that, or as a result
and I'm
of you,
offended.
And, right. That's that automatic attitudinal default, and that is the antithesis. It goes against your ability to go through and critically think and say, wait a minute, okay, I'm gonna stave off my taking you personally, and I'm going to go through and ask you more clarifying questions so I understand where it is that you're coming from, and then I want to engage with you with my ideas as well and see if we can't come to some.
It makes you so easy to
understanding.
manipulate. If you're not being a
If you're
critical
being tweaked by
thinker,
it, yeah.
you're just going to those bots
If you just-
send you those dumb, stupid ads and and the extreme, misrepresentative fake news does send you messages. You're easy to manipulate because you're not doing your critical thinking.
Here's the deal.
Yeah.
We've been manipulated. We've been manipulated on a grander scale than we've ever had before in any electoral process in the history of this country. And we've had certain channels to go through and dupe us collectively on a number of different levels, and regardless of what side of the body politic you happen to fall. We've been sucked in by political theater. We've surrendered maybe even our own positions just out of fear of how we might be evaluated, or though we might even lose relationships as a result of where we're at.
Fear.
And it's time to maybe stop doing that. It's time maybe to find courage in the conversations and to go through and engage people, and certainly engage. We are the constituents still involved in a republic. I have to censure myself and say not necessarily a democracy.
A democratic republic?
A democratic republic. I still even struggle with that correlation. And yeah, go ahead and bring on the emails and letters with that. But we cannot stop engaging our representatives. We have to do that now more than ever.
And we have to be well informed in order to be effective doing it.
We have a
Yeah.
midterm election coming up, and if we don't see any change, if we go through and do what's been done on all of the other midterm elections where the incumbents have been voted right back into office, we do deserve the government.
Well,
that
in our
we've got.
caucus, just to compare numbers, 2 years ago when it was a presidential primary, we had 112 people from our precinct. This year, midterm elections, 30 people
Right, yeah.
showed up. 30, as compared to 112 2 years ago. If that's an indication of how interested people are in what's going on, it's a little bit discouraging.
How do we fight the exhaustion of that?
We just have to, because we have to have other resources that build us up and strengthen us. We have to have other resources. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll call it. We're coming into the last minute of the show here. Anything you want to wrap up with?
Just that I'm going to be sad to take a break during the summer, and And I'd be love to know on Facebook what people are thinking and what they would like to hear more about or less
If you haven't
about.
had a chance to pipe in, I hope you do here. I'm not seeing anything come up yet. I'll be monitoring this during the summertime, so as you watch the shows and things that way, and if you still want to post, feel free to go ahead and do so. And we'll hopefully carry on a conversation. Jen, it's always a pleasure. It's been my great honor to have had these conversations with you.
Thank you.
This is what we're going into our 4th year.
I think we could be.
Now on this, so thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And thank you for watching, all 3 of you. Today we've had Michael and Alma and a few others that way.
I think my husband's watching too.
Oh, okay.
He's usually pretty good at that.
Talking Point Live will come back to you live next fall. Thanks for joining us.